Oh no.
You can see my response.
You know where they are. Not in your ear.
This work session of the Livingston City Commission is called to order. May we have roll call, please?
Here.
Here.
All right, so Michael Curtis, our city manager, is going to go through our process. I do have one reminder that if you as public would like to speak or have questions after we address each goal, come up to the podium and state your name and address. And I'll remind you if you forget. Michael?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the city's organizational strategic plan started about a year ago when the commission was looking for a more strategic document that laid out everything we were looking at doing, and I think more importantly, the reasons why we were doing it. So we started this process last January with the Local Government Center from Montana State University. The commission did several sessions, open public sessions, to develop the mission, vision, values, and goals for the city. So we did that about a year ago. At that point, the commission handed it off to the staff, and we have been working on the strategies and actions. So we went from the large overview, the big picture. We tried to really bring it down into strategies that we were going to go forward with, but more importantly, actions that were actually measurable, things that you could tell whether or not we've actually done. And so this draft, that's where we are in the process right now. The staff's ready to bring this back to you. We'll present it to you. We'll take public comment, we'll refine it, and then we can finalize it as we move forward. For the sake of tonight, the way we'll go through it is we will do it goal by goal. I'll present the goal. I'll tell you what we came up with, how we came up with it. We'll allow some time for commissioner comments, and then we'll open it to the public for public comment on that particular goal instead of making everybody wait till the end to speak. That should give us about 20 minutes per goal. So I'll try and keep my presentation to 5 minutes, and then we'll leave the rest of the time for question and answer. That being said, the first goal that we have is quality workforce. So the goal that the commission gave the staff was instill a culture that attracts and sustains knowledgeable and engaged employees that embodies the city's organizational values. And you can reference the organizational values back on the first page, but they are collaborative, excellence, integrity, innovation, and stewardship. So we developed a 5-strategy process for this. We can talk about the strategies first, and then I'll talk a little bit about the actions in each one that we believe will achieve each one. To instill a culture that attracts and sustains knowledgeable and engaged employees, we thought there were a few factors to that we needed to create professional development programs so that employees that were there felt they were being developed, that they were progressing in their profession. To create some employee recognition programs. This actually came out of a survey that we sent out to employees and asking their ideas for what they would like. They thought we needed more recognition programs, so that's something we will look at. Create key position succession planning. As we went through this goal, we said one of the things that helps a workforce quite a bit is consistency, to be able to have that same type of leadership as we went through. So we did analysis of our own workforce and found out that we could lose 40 to 60% of our department heads over the next 3 to 5 years, and decided that maybe succession planning was something we needed to do. Then we wanted to look at restructuring the organization as well as the physical spaces that went with them, and then develop a quality recruitment strategy. So those were the strategies we came up with. Those aren't necessarily measurable, but then each one of those strategies, we developed actions that we believe are measurable. And for the actions, we try to outline at least vaguely what resources would be needed to accomplish that, and when we thought we could get that accomplished. So if we go back to create professional development programs, we want to codify the Good Governance Certificate. That's a program we started with MSU that is available to our employees. They get a small certification pay for completing the course, and it really revolved around conflict management, understanding different personality types, and being able to deal with the public. That's both a staff time and an MSU extension item that would need to be done. We thought we could get that codified and actually have a program in place by 2020. One of the other things that came from our survey of the employees was that they would like to pursue some outside training. They would like some training that's outside of city staff. I thought that was a staff time and obviously finance issue, and something we could look at determining what we could have in place by 2021. Under the employee recognition program, those are mostly staff time requirements. While we determined that the employees would like recognition, we thought it would probably be a good idea at this point to go back to them with a more focused survey and say, what does that mean to you? What is recognition to you? Is it financial? Is it employee of the month? Is it, what is it from their thing? So our first action is going to be to survey the employees to see what's meaningful recognition to them, and then to develop an improved communication process. A lot of the communication processes at the department head level, or especially at the commission level, weren't getting farmed out through the entire organization. So we want to look at how can we make sure that all employees receive the information they need, but more importantly, feel like they're being involved in some of the decision making as we go forward. You can see that the succession planning was probably the largest strategy that we look forward. Some of these items are very specific to departments. The creation of the assistant chief of police position is one, the deputy fire chief position. Those are probably the two positions right now where we don't have a very good organizational structure that allows us to develop someone to step into the chief role, and that will lead to outside hiring. And to prevent that, we'd like to develop a deputy position in those departments so we can develop people in our departments to take over those roles. Also, we want to identify additional key positions. Those are positions in the organization that may not have a significant organizational role if you look at the structure, but do as far as people that have key knowledge or key understanding of processes that isn't necessarily related to their job specifically, but because of the time they've served in the city. So we want to identify those key positions and figure out how to do not just succession planning, but knowledge transfer as we continue with that. And then develop the succession plan for those additional key positions. Under the restructure of the organization and physical spaces, we're going to do a little reorganization research. We've been looking across how we are structured currently, and we think there's probably some room for improvement, but there's some things we need to put some analysis towards before we make any big decision. And then one of the things we like to do is align the physical space with the organizational structure. Right now, the city is pretty good at having facilities out where the public can access them, but it's not very conducive to administrative and staff time because we have facilities spread across the entire city, whether you look at the finance office, the civic center, public works out at Bennett, and then some of the city offices here as well. So we're going to look at if there's a better way to align those physical spaces to help improve our administrative processes. And then to continue to pursue efficiencies by looking at services that the county and the city both provide, and see if there's further areas for cooperation where we can either combine those services or at least cooperate in those services to save some money and do it a little more efficiently. And then for the recruitment strategy, really that's looking at how we do compensation, and is it based on longevity, is it based on the position, so that when we go to do recruitment for those positions that we're competitive in the surrounding markets. Some of that's difficult in this area because we are in close proximity to Bozeman. We are not going to compete with them as far as salaries go. But that means that we have to make sure that our other compensation packages are aligned with the things that Livingston can offer, whether that's the small town lifestyle or the other things. We have to make sure that our compensation packages enhance that and aren't trying to compete on a level that we can't compete. And then we also want to review and update our policies that affect recruitment. You'll see that throughout this document, that we think that reviewing and updating policies is an important part of making sure that we're operating efficiently, whether that's just internal policies or whether that's the ordinances and the code that go along with it. And then finally, probably a major issue that we've talked about, but is to analyze the workforce housing availability and affordability. If we're going to continue to try and recruit quality employees, we have to make sure that they can live here in Livingston. We've had to offer some waivers to requirements and living distances lately to allow people to find affordable housing. We currently have city employees living in Big Timber, city employees living in Clyde Park. other places that they can get more affordable housing than Livingston. So we think the important part of being able to staff city departments is being able to ensure that city employees can find housing to live on according to the salaries we're provided. So that is quality workforce. I will turn that over to the commission for commission questions, and then once you're completed, we'll go to public comment.
Commissioners, any questions yet? I'll start with a question. Have we, aligning our physical space, organizational structure, 142.
Mhm.
Have we started working with the county, or do you have any feedback on our work with the county? I know it's been a long process, like with the 911 center or different areas within the building that we work with the county. Do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, really both, between the city and the county, both have been expanding. There's really no room left in the city-county building, unless there's a physical modification, whether that's an addition, if we can figure out a second floor can be added. It might be combined with a look at a remodel of the jail, detention center, and see if that would be something where if we remodeled that, we could work on more space. It might also include either new facilities and or remodel of the public works facilities to allow some cohabitation of different departments there. It really just depends partially on how we reorganize the structure itself, because that will determine where the space is needed. But we're looking at a lot of possibilities. The question is just going to be which ones line up the best and which ones are affordable.
Great, thank you. Warren?
Yeah, creating assistant chief of police and deputy fire chief, that's, if I understood it correctly, is from within the organization that exists.
Yes, that would be the intent. It will add a FTE overall because we'll still need the same number of patrol officers or firefighters. So it would be an increase in the size of the departments, but it would be, right now, without those positions, only the chiefs are the only non-union employees in those departments. So it's hard to develop a management portion of someone that's still in the union. So that would allow us to do that. The departments are growing anyway. I think this is a more efficient use of those additional man hours.
Any other questions, commissioners? Please come up, public, and state your name and address before you speak. Any public comment?
You want me to sign in here, I think.
Yes, please. Sorry, I forgot about signing in.
I'm Rick Van Aken, as a civic commissioner. How long ago was that then? 7 years ago, when I departed. Under an agenda section, what do you want me to do?
Don't worry about that.
Don't worry about it. Okay, I just want to offer a quick comment because I have another thing to get to at 5:30. And in this particular section, I just wanted to compliment you on talking about section 1.3, creating a succession plan, because my experience lately has been that it is absolute torment when you have somebody leave fairly quickly and you don't have a built-in backup to your system. Besides the fact that just the sheer fact of cross-training is really valuable. Of course, the idea of combining efficiencies with Park County and stuff. I just think this gets to some sections some issues that we've been dealing with. I think the whole community deals with them. You know, people leave for other positions or find other jobs or something, and you just constantly have to back to this. So I want to offer that compliment. I'm going to depart and see you next meeting.
All right, thank you, Rick. Any other public comment?
I'm Jean Kepler, and I live on 724 River Drive, and I also, my husband David Stanley, and I have a place, that's okay, isn't it, on Swinley Road. And sorry to come in late, but I have seen the plan, and I've looked at it pretty carefully. And I just want to say that I think it's a great step. I think it's put together really well. It's understandable. It shows what kind of aspirations we can have and shows the kind of cooperation that's required. I wouldn't kid myself that there's some tall mountains to scale or however it is we get up them. But I just really wanted to applaud a really excellent piece of work here. It looks like kind of a document that has taken a lot of thought on the part of city departments and employees. And that's a really big thing. Every issue, we've only been at our place on Swinley Road for 23 years. So we're newcomers, of course. And we just bought our place in town a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. But the issues that I hear people talk about and express concern about, every one of them are covered somewhere in this plan. Many of them to be addressed in the next year or two. So anyway, I just wanted to say that it's a nice piece of work. It's good to see it.
Thank you, Jean. Our staff has done a great job of working through this document. We appreciate you. Any other public comment?
Yeah.
You just move the mic, Judy. You just stay there for your second.
Thanks, and appreciate that. Thank you for having a workshop. I haven't seen this. I was here for the brainstorming on the strategic plan that I believe Sarah had originated as a concept. And I have to say that understand, this is a really good plan if you have government of, by, and for the staff. It is not a good plan when you have government of, by, and for the people. And I'd like to call your attention to a couple items on here. The railroad crossing. It's apparently an underpass without any public interest.
Tricia, I definitely want us, or all of us, to hear your comments, but can we, I don't know if you missed that part as far as splitting it into sections. So at this time, we're taking public comment on the first section. So would you mind, and then there's the, further into the document,
Okay,
the other issues that I know, or that issue would be in there.
okay,
Okay?
all right. Okay, because I think they're all mixed up into one document. And some of the things are appropriate for staff, governance of staff. And the other, for example, would be ensured by the Constitution of the United States. So that's an entirely different document that is being addressed. So this document is a generic addressing it all. And I find that really unacceptable, frankly. So I understand the work that has to be done by the city manager, once the public gets input to their representatives, and then the commission gives direction to the city manager, and then that is within the city manager's purview. Quality workforce, that's fine. But that's not a part of a strategic plan for commission. That is part of the city manager doing his job. So I think these are all put into one thing called a strategic plan, where I think it's going to be really important to separate those things out that are ensured by the Constitution of the United States of America and those things which are just simply managerial. That's my comment.
Great, thank you. I do want to state that as the commission, we have brought to the city management our goals as commissioners, which are related to our goals as listening to the community. So a lot of what this document is based on, the basic big picture ideas, we brought to the city.
And can I make a response to that? Because this is comment, so you're kind of correcting the comment, but.
I just wanted to clarify to make sure people knew that this document is based on not just the city management and staff bringing us information.
Yeah.
We gave them lists of goals as commissioners that come from us from our constituents, so
And
that,
that is correcting public comment.
yes, we directed this.
Because you are correcting public comment, because in fact, I was there for the strategic planning process, and shame on the public if they weren't there for that. So they should know what the goals that you had given out at that meeting. I understand that. And that was great because there was public involvement in the strategic planning process, and it is much appreciated. What came here is very different from what those meetings were all about. So I don't want to be corrected with public comment, if you wouldn't mind.
I'm not correcting, I was just telling you how the process went from our side as a commission as well.
And I was there. So I do know.
This that happened more recently before the strategic plan,
Well,
so it's not correcting,
to
it's
talk to the public
explaining.
and explain that my comments are in your mind are incorrect, it's not just accepting public comment.
But I didn't do that. All right, so do you want to move on to the next?
We're done with public comment, we can go to goal 2. Goal 2, presented by the commission, was financial stewardship, and that goal was create and maintain a financially sustainable budget to fund first the city's responsibilities and then community enhancements by incorporating the city's values and innovative funding sources. So the strategies in financial stewardship are interesting because they're almost always competing with the other 4 goals, because almost everything that you do costs money. So these strategies are ways to try and maintain that fiscal responsibility while still being able to fund the other needs of the community. So the first strategy we looked at is to establish operational reserves in all non-rate supported funds. We currently do that in the general fund. We talk about that all the time, 16.67% that we would like as a best practice to establish in the general fund. As we look through some of these other ones, what we really came up with is if we're going to do this correctly, we need about a 33% reserve in the general fund because we don't receive tax revenue until, well, this year until almost January. So you're going from July through January with no revenue. So unless you have about 30% put away, you're eating into the reserves of other funds to continue to operate in the general fund. So we'd like to create a 33% reserve in the general fund, about a 16% to 17% reserve in the ambulance fund, and then 33 1/3 across the library, dispatch, light maintenance, and street maintenance. So if you're wondering why these funds, these are funds that pay operational costs for primarily salaries. So salaries exist in each of these funds. So we need to be able to maintain those salaries across the time before we get our first tax payment from the state and without dipping into other funds reserves. least that's the intent. I think it's been alluded to earlier that this is a fairly aggressive plan, and it is a fairly aggressive plan. This will be difficult to achieve, but it is what we would like to have as a goal. So we put it down there. It's gonna take staff time, and it's gonna take budget trade-offs to figure out how to do that. And we don't anticipate getting to these levels until the end of the strategic plan, 2024. And honestly, we probably still won't be to these levels till the end of 2024, but we wanted that goal out there and something we could strive for. It will probably continually get updated as we update the strategic plan. We'll continue to push that goal out as we continue to strive to meet it. As I kind of referred to, we talked about aligning the expenditures with the revenue cycle. We base our budget initially on what you're budgeted for the year. However, that's not how money comes into the city. So we looked at trying to align how we spend our money with how we get our money. It seems like a pretty simple concept, but sometimes in government, simple things are not easy to do. So we looked at when do the tax payments come in if it's tax funded. If it's fee funded, it's a different kind of profile. So we really wanted to look at that ebb and flow of expenditures versus revenues and make sure that we are spending money at the time that the revenue comes in for those things. How we do that? First, we want to budget with purchase deconfliction. That means as we look to purchase new items, we're probably going to do that towards the end of the fiscal year after we've received at least one tax payment and maybe two tax payments. That might be different if we're buying something for the water or the sewer fund, which is fee-based and not tax-based. But we still need to look at cycles and how fees come into those funds as well. Obviously, water use is higher in the summer than it is in the winter, so we need to make sure that we brought in the correct amount of revenue before we start to make purchases. That goes hand in hand with developing quarterly spend plans. We've always looked at the budgets and see where we are in the annual budget, but sometimes if you're 25% of the year, it doesn't really mean you should be 25% of the way through your expenditures. Especially on cyclical things such as a swimming pool, which see high expenses in the summer but no expenses in the winter. You should really align those spend plans along with the cycle of how the spending actually happens. So we're going to look at those and see how we figure. It'll take some analysis in the early years to figure out what those cycles are, and then we can better align our expenditures with the revenue cycles. The last one is to budget expenditures to maintain cash balances. A lot of times we talk budget, we don't talk cash. And there's a difference, and it's kind of esoteric, but the city has a cash balance. All the funds that we have in the budget aren't held in different accounts. They don't all have their own bank account. It's not like if you go over in the general fund, you're overdrawn the general fund account. That's all held together in city funds. So that's the cash balance that we have. So we need to be cognizant of what that cash balance is at all times so that when we're making purchases, we're sure we're not dipping into that cash balance and we're not putting the city in a situation we don't want to be in. So we'll look at not only our budgets to deconflict with each other, our spend plans to make sure we're spending in the correct cycles, but also the cash balances that the city holds to make sure that those are at appropriate levels as well. The second strategy we said was to increase budget transparency. We thought an actual way to do this is to maintain better line item discipline. A lot of times items get shifted around through the budget, right? There's one thing that costs more than we expected, another thing that doesn't cost as much as we expect. And so we shift funds to cover the unexpected cost with the unexpected extra. However, sometimes in that you kind of lose how much is actually being spent on each item. We thought we could do a better job showing the accounting for that. So if people wanted to really dig into it, they could see what a specific item would cost and maybe where that money came from, whether it's an extra or not. So that's going to be trying to figure out how to present that data in a way that's easy to read, which will be a challenge because the budget's hardly ever easy to read, but we will try and maintain that discipline. And then incorporate budget groupings into the presentation. So these are artificial groupings, so people can tell what, so one way to group it would be by personnel costs, supplies, things like that. Groupings that don't actually exist in the budget, but will give you an idea of what we spend in the city on certain groups. That would be in the budget presentation. It wouldn't be part of the budget itself, but it would give people a better idea of how the money is spent throughout the city. Our next strategy would be to increase the budget precision and sophistication. So that some of the things we looked at are the CIP. We could add specific completion dates, which is something that was lacking in the last one. We could try to develop 3 to 5 year budgets, which would show you when you make a change in a close year budget, how that affects an out year. And those budgets should be tied together. You shouldn't be looking at a year as a standalone financial entity, because it's not. What we do this year affects what we're going to do next year and sometimes the next 2 or 3 years. So developing longer-term budgets will help us show those ripple effects as we make decisions, and hopefully we'll give you more information as a commission as you make those decisions on how it's going to affect things further down the line. And then a standard budget calendar that everyone knows and is aware of, so that we can see where we are in the budget process, and it's easy to determine what the next step is and how far we are away from being completed. Additionally, we want to look as a strategy to pursue alternate funding models. One way is the Gateway County Local Option Tax that's gotten a lot of time lately. That's a different funding model. It looks to see if we can capture some of the money that tourists are spending in the community to cover some of the costs that they drive while they're here. Another one is to pursue grant funding for applicable projects. That's something we've always done, but that's just a clear goal that we're going to continue to do that. If there's a grant source available for a project, whether it's water, sewer, community-based, whatever it is, we'll continue to look for those grant opportunities. Next strategy is to establish an operational reserve for rate-supported funds. This would be water, sewer, solid waste. And basically the benchmark we looked at is 100% of operational costs, which in these funds isn't as heavy as a lift as it sounds, simply because most of the money in those funds is going towards capital items, not payroll. So in this case, operational costs, whether that's supplies or personnel, we would look to establish and maintain 100% so that we have that going forward. So that is the strategies and actions for financial stewardship. And so I'll turn it over for Commissioner questions.
Commissioners, any questions?
My first question is for section 2.1, the operational reserves. I'm just curious how the goals were determined, how those what was the mechanism for determining those percentages?
So 33.33 is obviously a third, which in this case would be 4 months. And that's approximately the amount of time from when the budget year starts until you get your first tax payment. So what we said is each fund should be able to pay for itself until it gets its first revenue. So if you're looking at the general fund, it starts in July, August, September, October, November-ish, December-ish, you're going to get that first tax payment in. And so the intent was that the fund was healthy enough to carry itself forward until it received its next revenue. It currently does not do that. So at about the 1.5 to 2 month point, the general fund is using money from other reserves to carry forward operations until we get the first tax payment.
Thank you for stating that again. I know you already said that, and I appreciate you restating it, just for clarity. I also just wanted to comment, if that's all right, on 2.3. I think that's we were talking about line item, disciplining groupings is a lofty goal. I know that I agree that those are probably lofty goals, but I think those are great for transparency. I think there's a lot of people in this community that would appreciate it. And also institutional memory for citizens and staff. It seems like it makes a lot of sense for people to be able to look back over time and see what the budget has looked like over time. And also, similarly, I think 2.4.2, that's the long looking into the future for budgets. 3, I think that's similar, but in the other direction. Big picture, it's probably helps the city function better when we can see what the long-term goals are for various departments and how those work together. So I appreciate that those are in there. Thank you.
Scroll down. Mine cut off, so I don't have the bottom. Is that good?
There's just one more at solid waste.
Okay. Go that one. Sorry. Anyone else have any other questions before I ask? On 2.5.2, pursue alternate funding models. It's a long time away, and I know we have talked about grants and some possibilities, just looking forward, I know with the Parks and Trails. We work with them a lot, with grants and granting. I feel like it's a long time, and I'm curious as to the timing of the 5 years out before we move towards pursuing some of the grants.
Sure, so that will give you an opportunity to clarify something about the dates. The dates are completion dates. So it's not when we're gonna start something, it's when we're gonna end something. In this case, the pursuing grant funding is an ongoing effort. So
Okay.
that's why it's listed as 2024, is because we plan to be doing it from now through 2024. And so some of these things are not, while they're measurable, you can see whether or not we got grants to do things. They aren't really time-based. And so for those things, we just put the end date at the end of the strategic plan to show that we will continually be working on it.
Any other commissioner questions? Public comment, please. Come on up.
I'm gonna underscore, this is government of the staff, by the staff, and for the staff. There isn't a single item in here that involves public meetings, input from the public. Every time it says resources, it says staff time. It says staff time, and my objection to the CIP that we used to have, which I feel was really truly unconstitutional, was the staff met together and decided $10 million and presented to the city completely done. And you do not have anything here which reflects the intent of the framers of the Constitution, which is that people bring to their representatives their hopes, their dreams, their input. And then these ideas are developed from there. And it saddens me that we have relinquished this great heritage we have in order to be efficient and to empower the staff, but not the public. I, for example, pursue gateway option tax. The public's been doing this because they love their community. I know a lot of us have gone into the legislature and attempted to get additional funding. There's 7,000 people in this town. It's not 14 administrators, there's 7,000 people whose lives are affected by all of this. And where are they? They are not here in this plan. This is an election year, I know. And I truly think we should go back to a mayor with a city manager under the mayor in 2-year terms. Because we have relinquished the voice of the people of Livingston, Montana. And you tell me someplace where it says initiated by the public, I see nothing. I know, now, you just don't like it if they don't agree with whatever the city manager wants to say. But that's just the way it is. The public has a right to say, empower us. This is our government. This is our legacy. Don't destroy it.
Any other public comment? Last call. All right. Next goal, please.
All right, goal 3 is infrastructure, and the goal presented by the commission was build and maintain infrastructure now and into the future that drives growth in a strategic and responsible manner. We started doing infrastructure the same format that we did the other goals, which was to have strategies and actions. But really, when you break down infrastructure, it's things. It's either physical things or conceptual things, things that need to be produced, things that need to be maintained. So we went with a different format in infrastructure. We thought it was actually easier to understand. because almost every piece of infrastructure spans several strategies. So instead of trying to break down strategies, we actually came up with categories of infrastructure. And we labeled those categories as either essential, facilities, foundational documents, IT and emergency conditions, vehicles and equipment, solid waste, and parks and trails. So those were the categories of infrastructure that we came up with. So when you get to the table of projects, you'll see there are actually projects listed. The projects go 1 through 24. There you have a category associated with them, the resources, and then the year that they would be accomplished. So infrastructure is probably the thorniest one to get into. So you look at the rank order that we gave these. I'm sure that there's nobody that's going to agree with every single rank order from 1 to 24. But additionally, things will probably not get done in order 1 through 24. Each one of these projects has a different funding source. Each one of these projects has different resources that need to go to it. Each one of these projects has a different cycle that goes along with it. So while we did list them in priority order, or the order we thought was the most important to get accomplished, it is probably not the order they will get accomplished in. And you can see that reflected in the projection of the completion dates. So you can look through all of the items, and I'll give you a quick overview of what some of them are. Personnel and public security, which is number 1. We've had some incidents where security of both the public and or staff was not certain, and especially in outlying locations away from the city county building. Here it's simple. Law enforcement lives here. It's easy to get a response. But if it is finance, if it is a civic center, if it's public works, there can be situations where it's not as safe and not as easy. So we said that safety for both staff and public should be the number 1 priority. That will require some infrastructure to go along with it. Basically, whether that's CCTV cameras, whether that's panic buttons, whether that's communications of some sort back to this building. We're going to have to analyze each of the facilities and make sure that we have the appropriate fencing, that we have the appropriate security at each one. So that's what that project is. We estimated at about $80,000 per facility. The second priority is the railroad crossing. We deem that as essential. And then you can see the resources there. There's obviously a lot more to be said on that, but that's where we felt that fell. And then our third priority was the rewrite of the current code. That fell into our foundational documents. And we have a cost of $75,000 there. Really what that is we believe it'll take a full-time staff a year to be able to go through all of the code, streamline it, organize it, deconflict it, and make sure that it's fully consistent within itself and actually reflects the intent of the commission. So we thought that is an underlying piece of infrastructure, even though it's more conceptual infrastructure. It's something that enables everything else that we do. So we thought that was an important one to have on there. Backup and recovery, almost everything you do is computerized in some form digital. We don't currently have a backup and recovery location outside of this building. So if we lost this building, we would lose all the information for the city, county, sheriff's, dispatch, district court, everything would be gone. We are pushing some backups to the state system, and that's useful, but we probably need a different physical location to make sure that that data and information is safe. Project 5 is a wellness center / pool that fell under facilities. That has been discussed before. We felt especially in terms of, you'll see this again reflected in the safe and healthy communities. We thought that was an important piece of infrastructure for the community, and something that we should move forward with at this point, at least determining what people are looking for and what we can afford. The West Side Water Loop, that is to correct the dead end loop that runs from the Startle pumping station, which is at the storage facility there on Highway 10 all the way out through PFL. But the dead end water run right now, it's based on those booster pumps. If the booster pumps fail, there is no fire suppression out there, or at least there's not enough. And we'd like to loop that in with the pressure system from the high side. It's a cleaner system, safer system, and would provide redundancy. So that's a fairly important project, especially as development continues out in that corridor. The sewer PER, we spent a lot of money on a sewer treatment facility, our wastewater treatment plant, our water reclamation facility. We should probably also make sure that we're not sending unnecessary water through that plant to be treated, to protect the capacity of it, and to make sure that we're saving money on the actual operation. We're going to look through our sewer system and see if there, what needs to be done collection-wise to make sure that we can get it there. that we're not hitting any choke points in the current sewer system. And then the infiltration and inflow study, that's the one to make sure that the river groundwater isn't being processed through the plant unnecessarily. So those kind of go together. We're looking at determining a green waste strategy. Our current system basically is green waste is free for everyone if you bring it to the transfer station. However, some residents have the ability to have green waste collected at their house for no cost, and some residents don't have that ability at all, no matter if they want to pay for it or not. So we said that there's probably a way to come up with a consistent policy across the entire city for all residents, and we're looking at what that would cost and what that should be. And then we have minimized maintenance costs. This falls under vehicles. We're looking at, as the city has grown and as the fleets have expanded, is there cost savings in having our own maintenance staff? Or is it still more cost effective to farm that out and contract it out to the different organizations around the city? So we'll do an analysis on that. At number 11, we have the Green Acres annexation. It's essential infrastructure because really the only infrastructure that needs to be added is sewer. So that is something that needs to go forward. That will be an SID requirement on the Green Acres residents themselves, and then the staff time and commission time required to get the annexation through. A radio replacement strategy, which is an IT infrastructure, which is for all of the units we have. So that's police, fire, and public works. And then we have an intersection site triangles plan. One of the common complaints you hear, and is very valid, is that visibility of intersections is poor. And that is true. And so we are starting the process of looking at what would we do to improve that? How would that be improved? What could be done? What are there ordinances that need to be put in place to support that? Are there physical actions that need to be taken? So that is a process we will go looking at. Storm sewer improvements. This is also listed under essential. We are it's 7,600 people last time I checked. That was last August, so maybe more than that now. If we hit 10,000 people, we require an MS4 permit for stormwater by the state. There are a lot of requirements that go with that. We meet almost none of them. So we probably need to start a process now looking at how we need to come in compliance so that we're ready for state compliance if we reach that level. And that could be as simple as making sure that we include it in any future projects as we do street projects, as we do sewer projects, that we keep that requirement in mind and build in accordance with it. Glass recycling is an issue that we need to come to a conclusion on. We accept glass for recycling currently, but we do not recycle it. We are just currently stockpiling it due to the cost. There are some options that we have. We probably need to sift through those, see what it would cost to continue to recycle glass, or if we don't think that it's economically feasible to recycle glass, to see how we get out of that business altogether. Downtown streets and utilities, that's obviously an ongoing project, and it will continue to be an ongoing project as we upgrade those utilities and make sure that our downtown's a welcoming area. Analyze funding for parks and trails. Currently, as parks and trails is funded out of the general fund, it really does with what's left over after we've done everything else. So we probably should do an analysis and see if there is a dedicated funding stream that we could come up with, and whether that's the commission deciding to earmark a percentage of the general fund to parks and trails, whether that is a parks and trails fee, whether that is a parks district. There are a lot of options, but we probably need to sort through them and see what, as a community, we feel is the right answer. ADA compliance plan, that's something we've already started. That was started a year and a half ago? Somewhere in there. And it's been actually very successful so far, analyzing what is available for our ADA residents, where they can get what's important to them, so their input's included into it, and then having that plan available as we go forward with projects to keep the ADA portion in mind as we build and improve. Cash in lieu of parkland strategy. As we talked about, the funding for parks and trails is never secured, and maintenance costs are high. So we need to do an analysis of should we be adding more parkland? If not, how do we ensure that residents have access to open spaces? And if we're not going to require developers to dedicate parkland, then what is the cash in lieu of strategy? Where does that money go? How is it charged? And what should be done with it? Solid waste disposal options analysis. There's actually a lot that goes with this. One thing you'll see in the coming months is we're starting a pilot program with Republic, who is one of the major solid waste organizations in the country. They have approached us about using our transfer station to to be able to move some of their solid waste. So that may be an opportunity to reduce cost in our operation. We may also look at other disposal options. Currently, we ship all of our solid waste to Cascade County. There are other closer options, and we need to look at what the transport cost would be to those. So that's just something we need to keep in mind as we move forward. Downtown street configuration plan. That's something we're looking at doing probably at the end of this next construction phase. Once the downtown streets are completely done, we can start with that plan and figuring out how we want to configure it long-term and look at the entire area, get business and community input, and then we'll, if we need to restripe or resign, we can at that point. Centennial Lift Station, that is just part of the sewer system that's going to need an upgrade shortly. You can see that's slated for 2023 for about $250,000. Sidewalks replace and repair plan. We have code on this. We don't follow it very well right now, so it's something we need to look at and see how we want to include property owners in the repair and replacement of sidewalks that are not up to standards, safety standards or ADA standards. And then the last priority that made this list was privatization analysis. We currently don't privatize any services in the city. There is some, I guess there's some opportunities to look at if privatization would save money for the city in the long run, whether that's to contract out parks maintenance, whether that's just the mowing, whether it's all landscaping. So, whether it's tree trimming, whatever it is, if there's current services that the city offers that could be done more affordably in the commercial market, we can do that analysis to make sure that we're at least considering the options that are out there for us.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions yet? Comments? Melissa?
I have a question. And I don't know if this would belong in this section or not. I was thinking about a recent guest or a recent comment from our energy intern. I know he's going to be sharing information over the next several months while he's here. Kamran Taranchi, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, hopefully. I was wondering, how do you see that fitting in his recommendations, fitting into the strategic plan? And I know that might be difficult since his information is probably going to be dynamic and difficult to predict what some of his recommendations would be, but I'm wondering, I think he's probably going to have some good suggestions for the city, and it might be related to infrastructure. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on working that into the plan.
So my guess is, and this is probably a good opportunity to talk a little about the strategic plan and what it is and what it isn't. It doesn't list everything we're going to do, obviously, and there may be things that come up that will fall into these strategies that can be added as actions, or they may not even really rise to the level of needing to be an action in the strategic plan, but there are still things that are aligned with our goals and our strategies that can be done. I see probably most of what Cameron's going to present to us falling kind of in the fiscal stewardship. It probably won't be infrastructure that we actually have to build outside of possibly, looking at a solar array at the water reclamation facility or that kind of project. But a lot of it should fall into the realm of cost savings. And once those cost savings can be realized, that is probably where we're going to look at increasing those financial reserves. So they would be actions to take to save money to increase those reserves to meet those goals we're looking at.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah.
Would it also be in the restructure organization and physical spaces? Because it's related to our physical space, and we might have to purchase some items to save money in the long run, that kind of thing. Would it be under there, or just, I was curious.
Underneath the water.
It could, and you'll find a lot of things that you think about doing will fall into multiple categories and under multiple goals. So we kind of selected the ones we thought where they fell. In fact, Jim pointed out earlier that we listed the cash in lieu of parkland strategy also in safe and healthy communities. So some of them got repeated.
They overlap, yeah.
But I think that could fall in one of several categories. But the nice part is it aligns with both goals. So it obviously tells us, as we use this plan as a decision-making tool to look at things that come up and say, are these things we should be doing? The more it aligns with the plan, the easier it is to say, yes, this is a an action or a project we should pursue, or if it doesn't align with the goals of the plan, then we can easily say, okay, this is something we should weed out because this is not one of the goals that the commission provides.
Commissioners, any other questions? I guess I have a statement. When I was looking at the list, so we have 24. One of the very cool things to me is that I was able to count 14 of them that are issues that we have discussed as a commission. The public has discussed to the commission, or the commission has addressed in one realm or another, where backup and recovery, although we talk about funding it, it's not as interesting, I think, as some of these issues. So it's exciting to see it in a list. 14 major things that people talk to us about regularly, from even the ADA compliance with just safety and sidewalks and, traffic study and traffic reworking that we have done over the past year. I think this list really covers everything we've worked really hard on and are going to work even harder on in the future. So I really like it. Any other comments, commissioners, before we put it over to the public? Public comment, please.
I would implore this commission to rethink this process. Let me give you an example. That $17.5 million, what I call a boondoggle, underpass that will potentially wipe out the pronghorn herd of Yellowstone, will destroy riparian area, that when this boondoggle was put on public media, people who cannot afford $30 a month are going to be forced to pay $30 a month for the next 20 years to pay for that $17.5 million dream of the staff. And the reality is that these are human beings. One of them, when we got it on social media, one of the people said, "That's my 90-year-old grandfather. He can't pay $30 a month." And that underpass is 2.4 miles from town. And we still end up with a D- or F rating for our downtown, with nobody taking a serious look at what could happen for egress across the tracks in the downtown area. And there are some of us who've explored that as citizens. The Greeks always said that the highest office you can hold in any place is that of citizen. And these citizens are not even being consulted. We're supposed to have some sort of input from the public, and I can assure you, they will say no to that $17.5 million that you have put down here and made the staff has made these decisions for us. It is so hard. You have to know, it is hard to come up with this money. That 90-year-old man, it is hard for him to come up with that $30 a month, and he doesn't want to. He is the governance of this community. There's 4,000 people out there who have a voice, who are being ignored, and not even given an opportunity to say, is this something we really want? It hasn't happened. We haven't heard from them. And so the staff, as far as I'm concerned, running with something that they shouldn't be running with in a democracy has created these as our priorities. And I don't know if you've had a hard time paying taxes, but boy, it's a struggle. And somehow we're supposed to be the ones that deny our children things so that we can pay these taxes so that the staff can come up with these ideas. And that is not fair, and that is not democratic. And that is not a part of a representative democracy. You must not pass this as such. This commission has to take the time to take a look at the legacy we have as a representative democracy. Please don't be a yes group for a staff of 14 people who may or may not know that much. That the more the community input we have, the better off we are. We don't even get a growth policy. We don't even get to say, under this administration, we don't even get to say what we want, what our vision, our hope, our vision for this community is. And I think this is the saddest thing I think the city has ever come up with. And they've been working behind our backs for 2 years on this, and that's not fair.
All right, any other public comment?
Hello, my name is Kenny Scruggs. I live at 112 South C Street, about a block away. I have a business that is at 1803 Sun Avenue. Most folks know where that is. It's right in the northern, in the, what do they call that, the Constellations. And I'm interested in a couple of different things. I'll hold off on the railroad for right now. The backup and recovery stuff, would that be handled by a third-party private entity to do that, or what is your plan for that?
So yes and no, I guess.
Okay.
It's an easy answer
That's the
for it.
time.
So IT is actually run by the county.
Uh-huh.
That's a county department. It'll probably be set up by a third party, but it'll probably be administered by the county.
Okay, all right. For item 3.10, when you're gonna be minimizing maintenance costs, talking about bringing maybe some of the vehicle maintenance in-house, when you do that analysis, are you gonna take into account the loss of business for the local business owners?
Yeah, we will.
Okay, I just wanted to know about the mechanics of it, the process. Now, as far as the railroad crossing goes, where does the $30 per, I'm kind of new to this process, where does the $30 per person per month come up?
Well, it depends on how you look at it. It depends on where a person lives.
Sure.
So the railroad crossing will be a whole separate process.
Mhm.
There'll probably be there'll probably be 10 public meetings. There'll be one in each of the voting districts, because we're gonna do it by voting districts to try and get some good actual data on where people stand on it, so we know how to move forward.
Okay.
So we'll do it by district. There's two aspects of, there's at least three sources of funds for the crossing as it currently stands.
Okay.
One is urban route dollars that have been saved by the state forest over the past few years. There's about $2.5 million there
Okay.
that can be directed towards the project.
All right.
There'll also be about a $3.6 million special improvement district that will be placed on probably, we're going over some of the boundaries, but
I'm
mainly
sorry.
people north of the tracks, probably down to Maine or Second, depending on how we look at it.
Okay.
And that will be a charge just to those residents, because they're gonna be the primary beneficiaries of a crossing.
How we determine the charge per resident of North Coast Track?
So the way we looked at doing it, there's a few ways you can do SIDs, but we're looking at equal share,
Okay.
which means each property pays the same amount.
Okay.
The reason we looked at that is because as properties are added, as properties are subdivided, they will all then participate in that.
Okay.
And all the new properties, any new development would then bear an equal share. And as properties are added, hopefully each individual share would go down.
Okay.
So that's the reason we're looking at that. method.
Same for commercial and residential.
It is same for commercial and residential.
Go ahead.
Is that right, Jim? It's the same, yeah. And then there'll also be a $9 million general obligation bond, and that would be throughout the whole city. So what you pay will depend on where you live. If you pay both the general obligation bond and the special improvement district,
Mhm.
that will cost you more than if you're just in the general obligation bond area. And that means the city. If you're a city resident, you'll pay the GO bond.
And
If you're in the SID, you'll pay both.
both, okay. And what, Do you have an idea about what that amount will be without, I'm not putting anybody on the spot or holding you to
I
it.
don't have the numbers with me right now.
Okay.
Was it 160 a year? 60 or 70 each, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's somewhere around 130 a year
Okay.
if you're doing both.
Okay.
It's somewhere 60 to 70 a year if you're in just if you're outside of the special improvement district. Those are rough numbers.
So more like, you know, $15 a month is what, you know,
Some
roughly.
15 to 20, yeah.
What's the idea with the wetlands, right behind my building?
So depending on what it is, we'll work with the EQ on that and
Okay.
determine how they want to do
Are
it.
y'all gonna do any EIS on that? I mean,
We're gonna have to do the environmental study on it.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to get involved with it. In general, we assume it'll be the same way it was done with Sun Avenue and Railroad
But y'all have to
and Highway 10.
offset.
Yes, we're
Okay.
probably gonna have to offset pretty close to the railroad there, so we'll have to work with them,
Okay,
because there's kind of a natural land bridge.
sure.
And so it'll probably be some kind of box culvert, instead of a bridge. That's what they've done with the other two, the railroad and Sun Avenue, but that'll all be determined by DEQ as they do the environmental impact study.
And why this route instead of the other ideas that I've heard bandied about, you know, with the overpass down further west of town?
Well, this will be, so the current crossing is we still haven't done the engineering study on it, so the engineers will really decide exactly where it goes, but the concept is to put it out so it intersects with PFL Way.
Okay. And that would be an underpass there.
Most likely, just because the railroad's already like 10 to 15 feet above Highway 10. But-
10-4.
It just depends on where they put it. They slide it a little further west, it might be an overpass because that ground's higher. So it just depends on where they say the best way to come across is.
One last question before my time's up. When will these meetings start for the public building?
I'm hoping February.
Thank you very much for your time. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Just name and address. Okay. My name is Karen Jakovic, and I'm 506 South 8th Street. And first, just wanted to say thanks for the article in the paper. Happy to pick that up and was excited to be able to come. Second of all, I work in real estate, and so it's very beneficial to see again these plans continued in motion, because we do see a question of where people are gonna purchase and how they're affected in their commutes to Bozeman. So I appreciate the clarity of the underpass going out towards PFL. I know that it's different from a plan that's been discussed in the past. But I think given the way our city is developing, I think that that's gonna help the people who have to work over there, so that when they can live here, they can actually enjoy our downtown setting, and the work that we're putting in there. So I think my comments are really more of thank you for the work that I know that you've been putting in. I know that Mike has made it a point to come to a lot of different offices and keep people updated when they can't be here. And I know that we've had options to have conversations with you as well, so appreciate that.
Thank you, Karen. Any other public comment? Last call. All right, next call.
Okay, goal number 4, presented by the Commission, is public engagement. The goal was to inform and empower the community through open dialogue in a welcoming environment. We came up with 3 strategies for this. The first one being coordinate city outreach. We don't have a lot of official policies on how we release information. We have ways we do it, but we're looking to formalize that process a little more so it's consistent. People know where to go for information, and people know when that information is going to be there. So the first action is to create an information release policy. That will tell us what kind of information we put out, and when we do put it out, where we put it. So it just helps us be more consistent in how we reach out to the public. Develop a city manager outreach program. That would include hopefully some kind of either monthly or quarterly article on the webpage, maybe interacting more on some op-eds for the newspaper, as well as you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I think the city manager used to go on the radio as well and do an interview session every so often. So if there are people that get information that way, that might be something we could restart up. So we can talk about issues and try and get it out as well as possible. And then the last action under that is to develop a job description for a public information officer. We probably aren't to the point yet where we need a public information officer, but we're probably getting close to it. And so we thought if we put some time and effort into determining what we thought that individual should do now and start to write that job description, then when the time came, we would be ready and we would be able to step forward with something we'd already thought about and developed. So that's the outreach, the Corning City outreach. The second is to enhance commission outreach. Commission's already doing part of this, but I thought it was nice to get it formalized and put on the schedule so you could kind of see what that looks like. So we wanted to schedule 2 commissioners per listening session. You guys pretty much already do that, but now it's something formalized so we can check it off and say, hey, we're going to continue to do that. And hopefully, as we proceed, that's something that we'll keep in our arsenal. And then hold 8 commissioner listening sessions, January through June and August through November. So I gave you July and December off. You're welcome. But that gives us the opportunities to know that really how often that's going to happen. We can formalize that process. What that'll do is it'll help staff help you in scheduling that. So if we know when you're going to do it, we can set that up according to your direction, and then it's going to be easier for you to plug into it. So that just kind of makes it simple on your side. The next strategy or the last strategy is to improve community access. We thought we might, now that we've spent some money on some survey software, we thought it'd be nice to conduct quarterly surveys with the community on any hot topics, see if there's information that we can gain. It's unscientific and informal, but it might help us reach some people that aren't able to make it to meetings or don't want to come in and speak. And we'd like to create a city topics email list. We're working through this with the IT department right now, but actually have a button on the website where people could subscribe to a city topics email list. And then as issues are going on, the city can write small little vignettes on whatever's going on to get information out, and then just do an email blast. And if you signed up for that, you'll receive those updates without having to do anything except check your email. And then develop a social media policy. Actually pretty active on social media right now. We try to use Facebook to get a lot of information out, Instagram to get a lot of pictures of the good stuff that the folks are doing, all the employees out there working. So we'll see a lot of that out there right now. In fact, we put this meeting out on both Facebook and Instagram, and I think the last I saw, how many people had seen it on Facebook? Yeah, it was over 2,000 people, over 2,500 people that at least seen the post on Facebook. So it's a pretty good way to at least start to get information out there. I'm sure there's ways we can do it better, and that would be the intent of the policy, is to figure out how we're going to interact on social media, how we engage, when we engage, and what that looks like. Then create a quarterly newsletter that's kind of old school, but we thought maybe that would be effective. And then make that available hard copy in the library and other places like that. And then lastly, create and update the city phone tree. We have a pretty good phone tree right now for people to call into, but it's always nice to get directed to the right department. And if there isn't somebody manning a phone right now, you may or may not get there. So we want to make sure that we get the right phone number out of there. Also, one of the things where this could actually help us operate more efficiently is right now the city information line goes to dispatch. And especially when there's bad weather or something else going on, that's not a real good use of the dispatcher's time. So we're looking at creating that phone tree so people need information, we can get them to where they need to go, but it's not eating into the dispatcher's time and not taking time out from a call for somebody that's actually calling with an emergency. So that's one efficiency we thought we could maybe utilize.
Let's start with commissioner questions or comments.
We'll get some comments throughout.
Melissa?
Well, you weren't part of the process, so yeah.
I mean, I
Expect
think,
you to, yeah.
yeah, I think this section is full of a lot of great ideas. I think I've been really transparent that I think this is one of the larger issues in our community. And there's so many good ideas here, and I think a lot of it does fall on staff. And I know one of our biggest limitations as a city is we're all limited by time and money, and time is money. And so I was really excited, I think, to see a lot of the things in here, but one of the things that stands out is the idea of thinking forward about a public information officer. I think that's really forward thinking, and I just want to acknowledge that. I think it's smart when we think about the demands on staff, which already have a full list of job responsibilities that don't necessarily include public outreach. So I think it's a way to support the staff we already have, but meet the needs of the people that live here. So I just wanted to say kudos for including that.
Any other commissioners? I'm going to pretty much state the same thing, Melissa. I noticed that, number one, this is one of the goal that is the most achievable in the shortest amount of time. And I think, if I recall, Michael, the first meeting you and I had when you first became city manager, we talked about communications and how to communicate to the public. And so I've seen a lot of even that beginning conversation that we had a long time ago. Also really, I think it's like Melissa said, forward thinking and thinking about how a small community is really working with the public. So I appreciate it. Public comment.
By the way, I wanted to make one little correction, because I sat in the city manager's office with him, and we talked about a $200,000 house, and it would be $30 a month that the person would be paying on it if they owned a $200,000 house on the north side of Livingston for that $17.5 million project. Again, staff time, commission time. Where is the growth policy? Where are the, even the things that are built into the law? Where is that? I don't see that. I have been to those listening sessions, by the way. This is the listening session provided by law. This is the only listening. If people want input into their representatives that they elected, they need to take the time from their day. They need to come to these meetings. Nothing happens at those listening sessions. Everybody talks, but there is no chain of power. We're talking about empowerment of people. And this is taking our power away from us. It is not empowering people. It is staff making decisions, informing us like we're kindergartners, and taking our power to say, we want a growth policy, we want the city to fund the growth policy because it's the law, and then we want to have input on what we envision for our town, not what the staff envisions for our town, but what we, the people, envision for our community. Where is our growth policy? Where is all the things that the law requires even in this document? And I absolutely object to listening sessions because this is the legal listening session. This is where it's supposed to happen because the law set it up that way. I'm chagrined with this. I don't mind people informing us about meetings. I replaced my leg. I have attended city commission meetings for 20 years. I've been a city commissioner. And I couldn't watch the city commission meetings. I couldn't get to the city commission meetings and I couldn't watch it on television. I just wish there were more people like me who simply said, this is my right, this is my privilege, this is what people have given their lives, so that I have a representative democracy. I have a say into a growth policy so that the people of this town can say, we would like this, not a real estate person saying, oh, well, we would really like to be a suburb of Bozeman. Economically, it will kill us. And there is nothing that says, those of us who are trying to make a living in Livingston, there's no voice for where we can get into our city and help them help us make a living so we can pay these taxes. You guys, this is a representative democracy. This is not a representative democracy. It's so hard to understand that. And what you're giving up when you're doing this. And what you're giving up for me and everybody else when you're doing this. It's not right. It's not right. Empower the people. Listen to them. Let them come to their legal meetings and have input. They quit coming. I watch it over time. They quit coming because nobody hears them. Nobody listens.
Michael, would you do a quick update on our plan, the growth policy, just some timelines that we've discussed?
Sure, so we've been working on some alternative funding for the growth policy. Most of that's coming together. We will probably do a request for qualifications in RFQ mid to late summer. That'll align it nicely with the impact fee study being completed. We'll be able to use the background information that we're paying that firm to do to roll into the growth policy, as well as the strategic plan can be used by the firm that does the growth policy to roll into that. I would expect work on the growth policy to start in the September to October timeframe, and then however long it requires them to complete should be completed somewhere around the new year.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Moving on to goal 5.
All right, goal 5 is safe and healthy community, and you may dislike us for this one. So we started to do the same strategy action for this goal, and we actually had some difficulty, and so we rewrote your goal. I think we maintained the spirit of it, like the intent of it. I think it's all there, but I'm gonna read you what you wrote, or what we wrote, because I was there as well, and then what we updated it to. So the first goal was ensure the health and safety of the community by incorporating connectivity, active transportation, quality emergency services, varied recreation opportunities, and wide stewardship of our natural environment into city activities. I think we streamlined it a little bit and hopefully got a little more to the heart of what we really wanted to do. Our suggested updated goal is foster community resilience by facilitating access to health and wellness resources, enhancing multimodal connectivity, and providing stewardship of our natural environment. So, and it was just a response of that's what it fell into when we started doing strategies and actions, and we said, okay, we're going to give a shot at rewriting this to better prove it. So that's something you guys can look at that and see if you like the update. If you don't like the update, honestly, you can keep the original one. The strategies would still fit because the two things stay the same, I think, just in a little different manner. So the first strategy we wanted to do for safe and healthy communities was to enhance the first responder capability. The first action is to maintain ambulance funding so we can maintain ambulance service for both the city and the portions of the county that use it. That will require some injection of cash, whatever that may be, $400,000 a year over 10 years. The second is to fund a Missouri River Drug Task Force officer. One of the issues that's often brought up by the community is drug enforcement, drug awareness. The county has an officer now. We thought we could get a little more synergy if we added a city officer to that task force. And also we'd be able to draw on that task force a little bit more. So that's about $80,000 a year. And then develop a plan to create a drug court. The county's actually out ahead of us on this one. They've done most of the work, but we just wanted to include it here to indicate that we're on board with that and that we will continue to work with them as we continue to go down that road. A lot of the volume through the court is based on drug interactions. And this is a concept that has been proven in a lot of other places where we can reduce the cost of individuals with drug problems coming through the court system and hopefully come with some better outcomes. So that was our first strategy. Our second strategy is to educate and connect the community. We want to create an adverse childhood experiences training program. So those of you that have heard of it, that's the ACEs program. We already do that. We have ACEs training. We do provide it. We don't really have a formal program of how we're gonna do it or when we're gonna do it, so we wanna look at that, maybe formalizing that a little more and making sure we're getting it out to everybody that we can get it out to. We'd like to create a childhood advocacy center. I'm not an expert on this one, but it is an actual designation where we have a certain amount of resources in one spot for the children in the community. We kind of started down that path. We'd like to formalize that and actually get the designation as a child advocacy center. Did I say that right? Yeah, excellent. Like to create a resource webpage for the city website. Please approve this one because we already did it. It's out there. It's actually really nice. If people are looking for resources in the city, it's across all the organizations we could think of where you might want to get a number for child services or Aspen or any community service. We try to include it on the webpage and give contact information. Because a lot of time people know what they need, but they don't know where to go to get it. And we thought this was a really simple way at no cost except base time to get that information out there and available to the public. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. And if people are looking for something, please direct them to that webpage because it is really useful. We also want to develop a community resilience strategic plan. That one's an aggressive goal. It's an aggressive action, and that's going to take a lot more than just the city to accomplish. But we really like to see what that looks like. How do we create a resilient community? And how does the community think that's done? We talk about suicide prevention a lot. Resilience is the opposite side of that coin. If you have resilience, that's the positive aspect of that. You can take, knocks in either your financial life or your personal life, emotional, physical, and rebound from those. That's the resilience that we'd like to build as a community on the individual level and also at the community level, where we can take bumps in the road, whether they're economic or natural disasters, and recover quickly and well from those. So that's kind of where we're looking at. The next strategy is to support external agencies in providing services locally. This one we talk about a lot, and it's an interesting concept. What we said is we cannot provide all the services to the community that the community needs, but we should reduce the roadblocks to other agencies that can provide those services. And if that means we have to help, then we'll see what we can do to help those agencies. What actions came out of that? Continue to fund the Wind Rider service. That's a transportation service that the city is not providing, but that allows residents to get to a lot of the other services that the city does provide, or the county provides, or other organizations provide. And if we can participate in that, then we can continue to ensure access to citizens to the services they need. We'd like to expand the early childhood coordinator hours. That's a part-time position right now. There's a big need for that in the community. We'd like to continue to look for funding sources to try and expand the capability of that position so that we can continue to serve our children as we can. And then we talked about a wellness center already in the infrastructure, but this is kind of the other side of that. Design a wellness center to include space for local services and state service programs. So if we're going to develop a wellness center, it's not just a physical wellness center, it's not just a pool, it's not just a climbing wall. It should be a space where we can help other organizations bring services to the community. If that's providing office space for state agencies that say they can't afford it otherwise, then we'll do that. If that's providing common areas that nonprofits can use or even private organizations can use to provide services to the community, then we'll do that. We will actively look for ways to go out of our way to partner with anybody that's going to provide the services the community needs and be supportive of that in any way we can, whether that's physically or in our ordinances, in our policies. So that's kind of the theory behind that. The fourth strategy is to enhance multimodal connectivity and transportation. We'd like to create an active transportation plan. That's something that the Active Transportation Coalition has been working on. We'd like to formalize that and really see what that looks like across the community. Develop multimodal design standards so that when developers come in to build a neighborhood, when we're looking at rebuilding our streets, that we already have the multimodal design standards in there. People know what they are and they're compatible across the state. That would be a new thing that we're doing. Connect the O Street trail system, so that would be from O Street out to the bridge. We're in the process of that right now. We've actually obtained grant funding and hopefully construction will start this following year. I think that'll be a great enhancement. It'll allow people to get out to those, either the wildlife areas along the river or out to the hospital without having to ride on the shoulder of Park Street as they have. So that's a great project. Create electrical vehicle infrastructure. So this is a forward-looking action where as we build streets, as we build sidewalks, we can create the infrastructure that allows installation of electric vehicle infrastructure in the future. And really what that means is making sure we put big enough conduit in to pull the electric, right? We don't have to put the electric in, we don't have to put the charging stations in. But if we put the infrastructure in where other organizations can provide that, or we can provide that at a future date if we decide it's something we want to do, we've done the work ahead of time for a small cost. We can be forward-looking and provide a service to the community. Create safe route to schools. We started this process. We'd really love to have that completed, where we have designated routes that are safe route to schools. We can publish those. We can get it out to the community, and everybody knows where hopefully the kids will be headed to on their way to school and on their way back. And that includes, making sure that we have the right curbs, the right, walkways, everything designated, the right crossings for them. Connect the west side developments. As development occurs out on the west side, whether that's further in Discovery Vista or whether it's out by PFL, we want to make sure that there's multimodal networks for them as well. As they're going to be out on the outer edges of the town, we'll make sure that there's a system for them to come into town without having to use a car, whether that's a trail or a path or whatever it be. We'll look for opportunities to connect them with the rest of the city. We want to complete the ADA transition plan. We already talked about that. That's one of those that falls into more than one category. And then the last strategy for this category is preserve and integrate our natural spaces. So pursue dedicated funding. We talked about that a little bit. So that's 4 parks and trails, but additionally just open spaces in general. We want to make sure that we understand how we can help fund that. We want to be able to maintain the parks and then create a policy for new parks versus cash and road. So we talked about most of those items already.
Commissioners, any comments or questions? I will start at this. This is probably the goal that I, in my work, see every day. So seeing the connection between what the city has worked on, is working on, and hopes to work on, makes me very happy. I'm just kind of overwhelmed that it's so connected, and I see how the various entities in our community have been working so hard on so many of these things, and now seeing the city have it down in writing, because I know we've done a lot of this. I've seen it in the process of being a commissioner, but it just shows how great we are. I appreciate it. Are there other comments from commissioners?
I'll add to yours, Darrell. I was just gonna say, this is also the section probably that most pertains in a lot of ways to my day job. And I think it's really proactive. There's some things in here that are really proactive, which I appreciate. And really holistic and big picture approach to really complicated problems. Like the community resilience strategic plan was one that you said is really sort of a big and complicated idea, but I think it's really important for our citizens, even if a lot of people don't know what it would encompass at this point. They will when we talk about it. And also the electric vehicle charging stations is really forward thinking. I think when we think about how to keep Livingston relevant to the whole state, I think it's going to be really important for our future. For businesses and supporting our downtown economy and all the things that a lot of people care about here.
Commissioner, questions or comments?
I'll weigh in on the rewrite of the safe and healthy community. I like it. I like the new rewrite. That's always our goal, try to get it 2 sentences or whatever, but yeah, I'm good with that. I like that. That's all I have.
Any other? All right, public comment, please, on goal 5.
Kenny Scruggs again. 112 South C Street. I think this is probably the most important thing that you guys are addressing for the whole community. And I want to commend y'all for that. One thing that I did want to ask about is a lot of this, especially in 5.2, is kind of dancing around what maybe the bigger issue is, drug and alcohol abuse in our community. And one thing that I think that the community can look at is how we can support people that are seeking treatment for this. Treatment is expensive, it's time consuming, even if you don't go to a facility, it's time consuming, takes you away from your job, your family, other things in your life. And at the Child, Advocacy Center, it goes hand in hand with that. But a lot of times, people need childcare so they can go to a 12-step meeting, or they need, and providing the support for people to get the treatment for the underlying cause of a lot of the needs here, I think is something that would be worthwhile for our community to consider. I don't know the answer. I mean, obviously, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be standing here. But I really think it is the biggest problem facing our community. And I've only been here for 5 years, but you can see it. And it's going to take everybody working on this, I really believe, to make some progress on this. And supporting people that are trying to do better would be a great first step. So that's all I have on that side.
Thank you, Kenny.
That kind of ties in with that intercept mapping that we were working on with, that's an ongoing thing that we should see results from. And we'll have to just in the future.
Fish Grable Jewel Forest Town District. I like this section, it's great. And it's great that the city's beginning to be involved. I wish, I don't see anything in this for economic health for the city. We're not having the debate we should have on that, $184 million came in from tourists that keep our businesses going. Printed for Less is like a fifth of that. That the economic driver for Livingston, Montana is tourism. We don't even have welcome to Livingston signs. Thank heaven the chamber took the initiative to get some welcome to Livingston signs, wayfinding signage and all the things we need to bring those tourists in here, spend their money and help support these things financially. And it's a great investment. If we invest in tourism infrastructure so that those tourists come in on 5 million people that pass our city, then we can pay for these things. And I know there's a lot of emphasis on Bozeman West, but take a look at Belgrade. Belgrade became a suburb of Bozeman and they lost their town. And Livingston has this opportunity to be this wonderful whitefish tourist mecca that makes all kinds of money, supports all of its social services, and flourishes. And I think it's incumbent upon the city to put as much energy into tourism infrastructure as they put into these other things so that we can pay for these really great programs that the city is envisioning. And if we don't, then we're going to struggle, and these problems are going to become greater, and we will not have addressed the potential of this town to be extremely healthy economically, and that will come from tourists. That will be and the city needs to take a stand and say, we are in favor of promoting tourism in Livingston, Montana, and beautifying our image and moving forward aggressively. It's sustainable economics. And please take that into consideration. That we need to pay for this and that's the way we can.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Madam Chair, Jean Rusugi, Chair of the Parks and Trails Committee. Thank you for doing this. I just want to offer the Parks and Trails Committee as an entity of volunteers who you've appointed that could be helpful on a number of these issues. We've already been involved with a lot of them in a few different sections, whether it's funding or the parkland strategy, cash in lieu of the community survey that we talked to Lisa about wanting to do. We do social media. We got a lot of comments on the O Street meeting and the project that we had last week with the Public Works Department. Very grateful for O Street and help push that along. So I hope you will look at us as complementing some of your staff time. We've had good opportunities working with staff on a number of these projects, and we're happy to keep doing that because these are very important to the goals and missions of our committee that you've appointed. So thank you.
Thank you.
Michelle Uberado, 711 Lockwood. I really intended to just come and listen and learn and submit written comments today, but I also felt compelled to say thank you for this section. I really think you're addressing some significant issues, important issues, and just wanted to share my gratitude and thank the city staff, manager, and commission for identifying and working towards these goals. And share that the Trails Committee is interested in supporting, I think, the Active Transportation Coalition, and there are likely other community resources, and I can speak as on behalf of Park County Environmental Council, that if there are ways that we can help the city reach these goals, please let us know. So thank you for all.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other public comment?
I just want to thank Dorel for her comments about the city getting in to support the childhood experiences program that you're planning to start and the advocacy center. And I think in the newspaper tonight, there was an article, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, about the needs that children have for outside school. And so I really like how you included that, and I make the whole thing come together. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any last questions or comments from the commission?
We're gonna have time at the very end to make comments
For you?
as a commissioner.
Sure. We're close to our time. Michael, could you start wrapping it up and then we'll have final commission comments?
Absolutely. So the remainder of the strategic plan, if you look through it, is really just illustrations of what is under the goals. It's illustrations of the actions. Also included are some day-to-day things that we have to do to kind of give you an overall picture of really the scope of what this strategic plan entails. It's very large and it's very aggressive, and there's a lot required to pull off. This really will filter new projects as they come through. We are right now at max capacity for what we can get done. If new things come in, we're gonna have to decide what things need to be dropped. It is aggressive, but I like it. Even if we fall short, I think we'll be doing a lot of good work on it. And that's really what we decided as a staff. I tried really hard to get them to push stuff into out years, and they wouldn't. So this is what we have, and this is where we'll go. Please feel free to go through the rest of it and just kind of see how it flows. But I would like to just address overall what some of the shortfalls of an organizational strategic plan are, it is not a community strategic plan. It is an organizational strategic plan, or it is for the city and it's for the city staff. And that is the intent. There is a visioning process going on with the Park County Community Foundation. That is more of a community strategic plan. It's not, but that's more along the lines of what that is. This is specifically from the commission to the staff. It's your instruction on what you want us to do and our response to you on what we think that looks like. And this is the opportunity for the public to chime in on that. There'll be another meeting 2 weeks from tonight, where we won't have to go through the presentation part, so there should be some more time for question and answer if the public wants to ask specific questions about the plan itself. But it will, I think it, in and of itself, the strategic plan helps with transparency because people can see what we're doing and they can see why we're doing it. And they can see what we intend to achieve by it. So that's really the intent of the plan. Hopefully it met those intents in your eyes. And we will have, the next few weeks and months to go through this and make sure that it's exactly what we want it to be before we finalize it. So thanks you for the time to be able to present it to you today.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So commissioners, I'll leave it open to whoever wants to. I know Warren, you have a thought
Comment.
or
I have
comment?
a thought. The strategic plan was, the foundation of this plan was put together by the commission. It was public, and there was very little public participation, and it was noticed. Most of all, I take great offense at being called a yes man. I've been called a rubber stamp previously, within the last several months. And I think it's a great offense to the people on the city staff who have put their time and effort, and it's been a lot of hours that they put in on it. Today, I'm going to my 4th hour of working for the city commission, which I don't begrudge at all. But I think being called a yes man or a rubber stamp is way out of line. And all of this was based after public communication, every bit of it. There's going to be public meetings in the future for the railroad crossing, and everybody's even going to have a chance to vote. So the whole line of thought that this is something behind closed doors is absolutely false. And the whole line of thought of being rubber stamps and yes men and women is also way out of line.
Madam Chairman, may I have
Thank
a
you,
response?
Warren.
Okay.
Thank you.
Melissa? Anyone else?
Oh,
No?
before we came here, we spent 2 hours at our new water treatment plant. As I saw this piece of literature in front of us, the more organized the city manager and his staff is, it's the same thing. If you want an apartment house, I'm sure you sit down and figure what your costs are and what you're gonna charge the people. These people run departments, and I was very proud to be out there to look at what the heck we've got. It is fantastic, and we've got great people running it. There's no question we're gonna sit down and talk about the overpass or the underpass. That's a totally different thing. This thing is, he's a military guy. I'm a military guy. We do strategic planning. And along will come with the growth plan and all the other stuff behind it, but the more on top of things that he is, the better off we are, and the better off his staff is. There's an awful lot of work that goes, everybody is pitching in this thing. We got a great community, and there's certain things that we don't fall in our bailiwick. I have a daughter at the state level. It's a nice paper they're talking about taking care of items that are beyond us. So this thing, but it's open. The door is open to walk in here. And I think right now we've got a great city manager, we've got a great staff, we've got a great commission, and we're gonna go forward. And I've been doing this for 7 years, and right now I'm proud to say that I'm a city commissioner. I don't walk or ignore anything. We had a listening session on Saturday. We had 7 or 8 people. And I will fill in the city manager what's on people's minds. We do have some critical problems that are very difficult for us to solve, but things that are gonna happen, sometimes beyond our control, but we'll be aware of them, so. I'm proud of this group, I'm proud of what's going on, and we're all working hard to go forward, so I do.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll jump in on the, just on the listening sessions. You know, I take, you know, I try to once a month take a couple hours out of my Saturday morning to open up the door for anybody to come in and talk about anything that we might, you know, as a city commission have purview over. And sometimes we ramble a little bit and stuff like that, but the things I do here or there, I do bring back to my fellow commissioners and from our city manager. And I want to keep on doing that. And it's, there again, it's another opportunity for people that can't perhaps get there here on a weekday, weeknight to, you know, be able to talk to the commission and stuff like that. It's a little less formal and something I look forward to keep doing. I'd also like to thank Dan Clark from MSU for being our facilitator on this. The guy's phenomenal. The way he organizes us and keeps us on track and stuff like that. It's a valuable resource, and I look forward to doing more stuff with him. Thank you.
Jarrell, can I comment before you wrap it up? I just wanted to first thank Shannon for the tour. It's fantastic, just like you said, Michael. It's even better. It really is. It's really great. There's a lot to say about how great the facility is. So thanks for taking the time to share it with all of us. And I was there for probably close to 3 hours.
I couldn't leave.
I couldn't leave. There's like more to see, and I even had to say no. It's like climbing the ladder. So anyway, yeah, it's really great. The strategic plan document, I think for me, when I read it, it really, I know my perspective is as a newer commissioner. I was first shocked to hear that our city didn't have one ever in the past. I think maybe it's because I'm also from a military family. I don't know. There's a theme here. But I think it makes a lot of sense for big picture and efficient management. So I appreciate that it exists, and I appreciate that it's in the process of existing. And I appreciate that it seems like our staff really have their finger on the pulse of our community and what the biggest concerns for citizens are. I think that's apparent in this document. I also wanted to say, in regards to public comment, in a perfect world, I think everyone will be able to come at 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. on a weeknight, but we don't live in a perfect world. And I am happy to see that there is an email address where people can submit comments, and I would encourage anyone that's listening or is not able to make it to a meeting or doesn't want to come to the podium and speak to submit comments. We also get emails as commissioners. And if you're like me, you probably get stuff in the grocery store or at school, like your kids' schools or anywhere else. And I think the formal announcements in the paper where we show up as a group for formal meetings are a wonderful place for people to give comments. But I just would really encourage folks in our town to reach out to us whenever they can, that's reasonable, because that's also appropriate as commissioners, I think. And so I just wanted to make that point that people don't have to come to a meeting to share their opinion, but I think we have a lot of approachable commissioners and also an approachable city manager, and dare I say it, staff are also quite approachable. So I just wanted to make that point clear. Thank you.
Well said, commissioners. Thank you to the public for coming to the listening session. Remember, we have commission meeting next week, and then the following week we have another listening session at the same time. So at that time, as Michael said, we will listen more, have more public comment and less of the outline of the strategic plan. We also have, like Melissa said, we have the opportunity to submit comments. So please share that with communities so that those comments from people who can attend can be added to our information at the next meeting.
Madam Chair, I believe that I have
Patricia,
the right to just say one thing.
we'll talk fast. The meeting is over. You and I can talk.
No, it isn't a personality thing. As a
This
citizen,
meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 7 o'clock.
the public should not be refuted by the commission. That is not the commission's right.